2024 Committee of Finance of the City Council. Members present this evening, myself, Councilor Di Natale, Councilors Cruz, Boschman, Zarella, and Walsh. There is nobody in the audience looking to make public comment, I believe. No public comment. I ask everybody just please make sure their electronic devices are in silent mode.
I'm expecting a phone call from Donald.
If any member of the public shows up after public comment period, I'll allow them to speak if we haven't gotten to the agenda item yet. We'll start with 101-24. In order, the City of Fitchburg hereby transfers the sum of $233,800 from Community Development Construction to Community Development Twin Cities Rail Trail Phase 2 for the purpose of acquiring rights of way to complete Phase 2 of the Twin Cities Rail Trail project.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you, Chairperson Di Natale, for letting me speak on this item tonight. I am requesting that we transfer internally between our construction budget to a new account for the Twin Cities Rail Trail Phase 2, and this would be to acquire mostly temporary but some also permanent easements along the right-of-way of the rail trail. Phase 2. So this would be easements that we're acquiring now for the purpose of constructing that rail trail next year.
Director Murphy, was this construction, the budget that's being transferred out of, was that initially for this purpose, or was that for something else?
It was a combination of Main Street two-way conversion and Oliver Street parking lot paving.
So is this leftover money from those that you have?
The Oliver Street parking lot paving hasn't been done yet, but now that is likely to be used as a staging site for the next 2 years for the Boulder Drive and the Main Street work. So that funding wasn't spent. The Main Street Boulder Drive conversion funding is left over from that project. I would have used some of it, excuse me, for wayfinding signage. But in the interest of a balanced budget and seeing the rail trail finished, this is the higher priority at this point.
Councilor Boschman?
Yeah. My question to you, you're telling me that the DPW is going to be, you think they're going to use Oliver Street to put their granite in it, but I thought they were digging up on the corner of Putnam Street and Main Street for that reason.
So there may be multiple sites that the contractors are using for yards while they're doing the construction work. You're correct. The one on the former Johnsonia lot, that is specifically to hold dirt that is taken out of the Boulder Drive project to be tested, and then not exactly sure what happens to the earth after that. But I could ask Nick Erickson and get back to you.
My question to you is, on that $150,000 that the City Council appropriated for a paved thing and put in trees and shrubs and all that, I was hoping we would have did it so we could have bargained with the guy that owns the property in front of Riverside Park and swap land. So we have a bigger area for a park, and maybe even thinking about shutting down part of Boulder Drive in the summertime so people can mingle, go to the restaurants and eat outside and all that.
I agree with you, and I do hope to be back here in the future in front of you requesting that funding again for Oliver Street.
My only question, if you don't mind, I want to say one thing. The city is not going to be responsible for that rail trail. Am I correct in saying this? We're not going to maintain it, according to Larry Casassa, when I asked that question a couple of years ago, Councilor Di Natale?
It was made pretty clear to the council at the time that DPW and the city itself would not be heavily involved.
And that is correct. The Twin City Rail Trail Association is managing the rail trail as it exists today. They're actually looking to put a shed up in a location so that they can be storing their materials that they use to maintain that. I know that there is some city services that are occasionally used, trash pickup. Police are ensuring public safety there, but for the most part, DPW is not undertaking maintenance of the rail trail.
Now, when that bridge goes over, who's going to maintain the bridge? Who's going to clean it? So, because I can see it now as I sit here today, or at home, looking on Facebook, and all of a sudden they don't even take care of the bridge over the tracks. We can't walk in the snow.
It would be the Twin Cities Rail Trail Association maintaining
It will?
the entire trail.
Okay, that's what you heard them all, right? All right, that's all I care. All right.
Make a motion to approve?
I have one hand up still.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was just going to say that the matter before us this evening is not to do with whether we go forward with the rail trail. We've already voted on that several times. This is just for the easements to facilitate it. But I am all in favor of what's necessary to go forward.
One more question.
Yes.
I thought we took some of the beautification funds from downtown, too. Was that true? No? Am I read that wrong?
Last year, we appropriated $50,000 for beautification. That was fully spent last year
Was it for?
during the last, spring, summer, fall. So that was gone by the end of the fall.
All right, okay.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve 101-24. If there are no objections, it's unanimous. Thank you. 102-24. Order there being hereby is appropriated the sum of $60,000 from cemetery perpetual care to cemetery capital repairs to mitigate water issues in Section Q and the memorial garden areas and help with preparation for a new columbaria unit. Ms. Poirier.
Good evening, councilors. So the cemetery trustees had a board meeting on 4/18, and they voted to expend the $60,000 in these two areas. For the high water table on the southwest corner by the Rotary, we have some graves that are in desperate need of that water table being lowered. As well as the new columbarium area for expansion. There's some water issues there that we need to address before we put that new unit in.
Continue.
I'm sorry.
Continue.
Okay.
Yep.
Most of this work, the engineering department has engineered these areas out for us. The streets and the cemetery divisions will be doing the work so we can save as much money as possible. We have expended the perpetual care interest account a few times in the cemetery since I've been around. We did the replacement of the 150-year-old water in Forest Hill. We did it in phases. We've done Laurel Hill, the fencing around Laurel Hill in phases. So this is the third ask to spend this money.
What would be the balance of the account if this goes forward, the $60,000? Do you have an idea?
Yes. So the balance as of yesterday was like 119,000.
So this will bring it down to like 59?
Yes.
And-
Yes. And this grows every year. This is, okay.
Yep. Yeah, it grows. It grows. Yep. So I
Yes,
just
so
wanted
the perpetual care funds themselves, we're not allowed to touch. We only touch the interest on that account.
So that was my second question, because a couple of people asked me, because it said perpetual care, their understanding was the perpetual care is for the maintenance of the graves and surrounding areas of those graves. They didn't understand why we were using it to maybe replace fence or fix water issues or what have you. Not understanding that it's not the principle of the perpetual care, it's the interest only.
It is the interest only. We do not touch that principal. That principal sits at about 1.5 million, and the trustees are allowed to allocate the expenditure of the interest only with your approval as well. So I'm not sure if I answered
No,
it.
you did. They didn't understand that the account is an investment account that has interest tacked onto it. So whatever that interest is, we are allowed by law to use that for any purpose within the cemetery, not touching the principal amount. Because
Correct.
a lot of people, when they pay the perpetual care, they believe it's like for their grave or surrounding graves only, nothing else to do with the cemetery. And
It's for
I
the
was,
cemetery as a whole.
Yeah.
Like the water system, the fencing, the betterment of the cemetery, and as well as, these will be graves that'll be impacted in Section Q.
President's roll.
Thank you. Just for the benefit of the public, because it's not a very common term, what is a columbarium?
Oh, okay. The columbarium is an above-ground entombment for cremated remains. We have 3 units right now. I believe I have 5 units left to sell. 2 cremated remains fit in each niche. The public seems to like them at this point.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. Yeah, I'm in favor.
Council Boschman?
Question, now, you just said, are we talking about the part that the city fixed in front of Memorial? Is that section right there, still get water problems there too?
Most of the water in that area, there's like 600 new graves in that area. They're all good. It's directly behind the columbarium that we have a little bit of water issues that they need to be addressed before we put a new unit in there.
Well, my question is, when you were doing all that work, why wasn't it done before, prior?
I don't think they realized that there was water issues, but we've had a lot of water over last year and this year, and we noticed some pooling in the area, and we have to put a big area to do the addition, so we need to make sure there's no water before we start.
Now, on that point, that thing you were talking about, where you put the ashes in, I noticed you have light fixtures on the side. Is that the plan to do? Are they going to run by solar in that, or no?
Those 2 lights are solar lights.
Are they solar lights?
Yes, they are.
Are you planning on doing more of those?
That would be the hope, is the new design, and I'm sorry I don't have it with me this evening, but the new design is a circular unit with some end units all the way around it. So yes, to put some lighting there would be, the best thing. I don't have any quotes for that at this point.
Now, my final question is, with the city running out of land for graves, why aren't we putting more of those places up where we just develop instead of having 7 or 8 graves, where you can actually have a heck of a lot more? Because people are elected, you get cremated versus being buried, because it's a lot cheaper. It's a big price drift. It's a lot, 50 or 60% difference when you get cremated to burial.
It's cultural. We're running about 50-50 between full burials and cremation, so we need to be able to service both in the cemetery.
All right. I yield the floor.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve 102-24. If there are no objections, it is unanimous. Thank you. Next, 103-24 order. There being hereby is appropriated the sum of $4,087 from Veterans Benefits, cash benefits, to Veterans Expenses, office expense. Councilors, Agent Marino contacted me earlier today asking, considering she had a Veterans Council meeting to be at the same time, if it would be okay if she had to be here. I told her it was okay if she couldn't come, because she submitted a letter explaining what this is, and to attend the Veterans Council meeting as they're prepping for Memorial Day activities and stuff. I'll just read the letter that the commissioner wrote. I respectfully request the $4487 from available funds to Veteran Services, and it's not coming from available funds, it's coming from within her cash benefits budget, so it's an interdepartmental transfer. to purchase new furniture. The furniture we are currently using is not functional and makes it nearly impossible to service our veterans in a dignified manner in which they deserve. Once May's Chapter 115 benefits are paid, there will be approximately $60,000 left in our cash benefits account. The monthly benefits have been averaging between $35,000 and $40,000, which means we should have a surplus of about $20,000 at the end of the fiscal year. I would also like to mention that we were just able to receive a repayment of benefits from a veteran in the amount of $6,230.20 due to a retroactive payment that he received from the VA due to a successful disability claim that we filed for him. This money will be going back into the general fund. And I personally have seen the furniture. It's to put it nicely, it's embarrassing.
Motion to approve? Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the transfer. If there are no objections, it is approved. Next, we have 10424, order that there being hereby is appropriated. I'm sorry. Yes. 10424, order that there being hereby is appropriated the sum of $1,612 from Veterans Benefits, cash benefits, to Veterans Personal Services clerical. Again, this is an interdepartmental transfer. Ms. Marino, Commissioner Marino wrote to the mayor stating as follows. This transfer is in order to account for a step increase that was due to the personnel July 1st, 2023, but was not budgeted for. So this is an accounting cleanup. Yes, Council Boschman.
A question for the city auditor?
Yes.
My question to the city auditor is this: with this $1,612 plus the contract that we settled throughout the city, would that bring that to about 6% raise that this girl's got this year?
I don't know if she had a step, well, that is a step, so.
It's a step
The
increase.
average, yeah, so the average, on the matrices, the average step is probably between 2% and 4%, depending on where it is in your career. It's kind of designed for someone to follow someone through a career, and but the average is 3%. So with, I believe that contract had a 2% COLA this year, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
It went from
So for her, it might be a 5% increase.
A 5% raise.
so in the budget for FY24, the salary went from $50,008 to $50,856, so an increase of $848. That was budgeted for, so that would be just quick math. That's 1.7%.
1.7%?
Was the $850 that was budgeted for. This $1,600 is on top of that.
So that
would be about $2,400 bucks.
2,400, and that's
That would be based on that's about 5%, 4.8%.
I already told you how I felt about that, Ms. Auditor, and I can't talk to Ann because she's retiring, but we got to do something about that next time contracts comes. We can't live like this. The working world outside don't get these kind of raises. I just want to tell everybody, we don't get them. Not 5-6%. No, we don't.
Okay.
We can't. And you told me yourself, we're only raising taxes 2.5%, and here we are. We're giving 5-6% every year to some of these people. All right. I don't want to put you on the spot now.
Yep, duly noted. Thank you.
All right. Remember that.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve 10424. If there are no objections, it is approved unanimously. 10524, order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $25,000 from Fire Department Personal Services Mechanics to Fire Department Equipment and Repair Auto Repair. Chief Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. So I'm here to request a transfer of funds from the mechanics salary line item into the auto repair line item. There will be a shortfall, and the reason for that shortfall is starting July of fiscal year 2024, our last mechanic had left, and it took us approximately 5 months to find a new mechanic. During that time, some of our vehicles, obviously, they needed maintenance. A group of firefighters stepped up. They could do a lot of the basic maintenance, but anything that was extensive had to be outsourced. That caused some extra payments that we had to make in auto repair. But at the same time, the lack of having that mechanic for 5 months created a surplus in the auto mechanic salary line item. I'd like to request that $25,000 moved from the mechanic salary line item into the auto repair, and that would help balance that part of the budget.
Council Boschman?
On this transfer that you're asking, how old are the cars? I thought we gave you guys bought a new car almost every other year. New car, new SUV. How old are the cars you're talking about? Oh, you're talking about trucks.
All vehicles, both.
All?
Yep. The support vehicles, fire engines, ladder trucks,
okay.
rescue, everything, ambulances.
Oh, okay. Now I understand.
It's about 32 vehicles, you know.
All right.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve. If there are no objections, it is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So the next 4 items were on last night's agenda. These were added today. I don't know if you want to take these all at once, or do you want to take them one by one, committee members? We got to take the loan last, so I'll just start with the first one. Then 10624 is an order transferring $1,803,292.37, crediting reserve for municipal purposes, and charging the following ARPA accounts. Ms. Auditor, I think what threw me off with this one is that worded correctly? Should that say credited
Well,
to, okay,
We're
charging,
charging
okay.
the upper accounts.
Okay,
yeah.
so-
It was easier to put the total up front, and then list how we got to that total.
Okay, so we're crediting reserve for other municipal purposes and taking it from the following ARPA accounts. Unappropriated available funds, $1,190,534.11. COVID test trace vaccinate, $312. $312,758.26. Rental repair program, $250,000. Storefront activation, $50,000. We also have 10724 to transfer $164,000 from Parks Department capital to reserve for other municipal purposes, and 10824 taking $1.4 million from Fire Department vehicle replacement to reserve for other municipal purposes, which would then, in its place, be the loan order at the very end, 100-24. So in total, the transfers amount to over $3.4 million. And as was stated last night, these are to be used to cover the, in part, the deficit.
Available funds in order to balance the budget.
Balance the budget for fiscal year 25.
Correct.
So my first question is on the unappropriated available funds. Is that interest?
Okay, so, I spoke about this last night. 1.2 million of that is interest, and that is, free to, it's not limited to ARPA purposes. The other $613,000 are these 3 projects that, the interest was 1.1. There was also a small amount that we had never appropriated. So the 1.19 is the interest plus there was 188,000 from that original tranche that we never used. Okay. And then these 3 projects were, they were the result of our review after the July storm last year, when we thought we were going to need for deficit spending for the storm that we had in July. And since then, the governor has awarded the city, I think, 1.2 or 1.3 million in climate resiliency funds. So that has helped, the Public Works Department in addressing the storm damage.
What is the total amount as it is right now, if all of these pass? What is the total amount of free cash we're planning to use
1.2.
to balance the budget? So all this other money that's going to other municipal purposes, where's that going? Is that going to get certified to
That's-
free cash? for
No,
next-
this is going to balance the budget. This will be in a budget order from this reserve to balance the budget.
So when you say the 1.2 million in free cash, that's existing
That's
free
the
cash
existing
in the
free
free cash account?
Correct.
Plus this?
Yes,
So that's 4.6?
yes,
So we're going to use 4.6 million to balance the budget?
that's correct. And that, I mean, obviously, there's work to do in terms of next year, because this is one-time money. But what it does is it honors all existing obligations. The big piece here is the Health Trust Fund, where we've had like a huge spike for the past, I don't know, 18 months or so or more, consistent increases in health insurance claims, and our trust fund is nearing, it's not going to be depleted, I hope, by the end of the year, but it's in kind of a danger zone. So we need to, we need to fund that. As trustees, we have a fiduciary duty to fund that trust fund. So that's a big part of it. We are in negotiations with the PEC, the Public Employee Commission, and trying to come to some agreement on plan design changes for the health insurance plans to reduce the burden on the trust fund.
And you said also last night that $1 million is pension related, another $1 million, give or take, is labor contracts.
Yeah. Yeah, and also debt has gone up from last year, gone up $1 million. Because we're starting to see the effects of the Crocker School and the library.
Now, that $1 million debt increase, weren't we putting money away in stabilization to fund that increase?
We haven't used that yet. That'll be next year.
Next year.
Yeah, because when these projects are finally completed, that's when all the borrowing will take place.
Okay.
And that's when we're going, so fiscal 26 and 27 are going to have the biggest spikes in the debt service. And we'll use that 1 million, and maybe, we'll even put another 5 in next year. But those credits are coming next year.
Okay.
But
And,
we're still carving out a space in the budget to build.
okay.
And that's this million.
And I'm assuming in the budget, too, that there's a lot of inflationary increases, like fuel, electricity.
Yeah, I think that,
I mean, it's all works together, right?
Yep.
I mean, so,
yeah, I mean, it basically honors all of our contractual obligations to employees at this point, to the health trust fund. And, the departments have turned back quite a bit of money to get us to this point, and there'll be pressure on them to provide services, but it buys us some time to work on next year's budget.
and also, is there any revenue accounts that we're seeing that are, I know last year there was some cracks in the armor with the landfill, cannabis.
Yeah, so, we no longer have the host fees that we had. We do have the cannabis fees, which are, I think they've increased, but I think they may have hit a plateau. We have increases to the tax levy, which are, typical. The cherry sheet is probably about even. There'll be some increases, but there'll also be some increases in the charges back to us. Chapter 70 is kind of close to our appropriation, the increase in our appropriation, so that hasn't had a huge impact, but yes, the trash program is no longer contributing to the general fund where it once did. We're now at a point where it's costing more than we're taking in. So there's a lot of pressure on the fund.
Okay, I have a question for, I know that, did you have your hand up? Too?
Yeah.
Okay, I know Mrs. Zarella wants to speak, but I just, Chief Suarez, this is on 10824. So can you please, because I've had a lot of residents ask me in the last 2 days, I know the answer, but I would like you to say it publicly. In fiscal year 22, we appropriated $1.4 million of free cash for this ladder truck. I know at the time it was told to us it was going to be like an 18-month period because of supply chain issues with the vendor. There's a huge backlog. I'm being told now that this truck's going to take probably 3 years now. Do you have an update from the vendor as to when this truck's going to be available for us?
I do. So everything that you said is correct. Back in 2021, In the city, we have 2 ladder trucks. One of our ladder trucks failed. It was at end of life, so we needed to purchase a new one. We went before the mayor and the council, and we appropriated $1.4 million, which was the cost to replace the truck that was at end of life. At the time, they told us it was going to be about 18 months to maybe 2 years for production and delivery of that truck. Since then, production and delivery was pushed back to almost 3 years. The latest date that we got was, January of 2025. About a month ago, they said possibly in November of this year, which would move it forward about 2 months. But all in all, I think it's about 3.5 years before we actually got delivery from the day that we appropriated the money. It's about, I would say, 3.5 years.
And the contract with them says that we don't pay them anything until we get receipt of it?
We do
Because
not.
we haven't spent anything, obviously, so.
Correct.
Okay, so the reason why the 1.4, because I've had some people ask from the public, because it's not clear.
Yes.
The initial reaction from some of my constituents was, are we not getting the fire department their new truck? And they had to keep reading the agenda to see that there's a loan to replace the free cash appropriation.
Correct.
The fire department is getting the new truck. It's just because it's taken almost over 3 years, when initially it was supposed to be half that time, we haven't spent any of the money yet. So the money is available to give back, and in its place will be this loan. My question, Ms. Otter, is the $1.4 million loan, what's the term on that we're seeking?
Well, I'm not sure that we'll need to even borrow the full 1.4. If this, from the way it's sketched out right now, we may need $1 million of that. We may need to use $1 million of that for the budget. The other $400,000 we think is going to be offset by the Longzhou window and door project, which I think we're getting a reimbursement in the next month or so. And once that comes in, it would reduce the need for the full 1.4
I see.
on the
So you're
fire
gonna
engine.
apply that to
It's
the-
already below $1 million that we would borrow. And then in the fiscal '25 budget, there is a line item for budgeted capital of $700,000. That could also reduce the need to borrow. So we may never borrow for this truck, but because we are transferring this cash over right now, we need to protect the truck in the event that these other plans don't work out.
Right, so that was my next
And
comment I was going to make, was that it's just, the loan order doesn't mean you're going to go pull the loan
Doesn't
out
mean we're gonna
tomorrow.
borrow.
It just gives the city the authorization to borrow up to that amount if you need to.
so if free cash is certified by November when the truck is delivered, we're covered.
Correct.
That kind of situation.
Yes, I'd just like to add, I've received the same similar emails and phone calls. So yeah, the city of Fitchburg is getting their brand new ladder truck that we ordered back in 2021, 2022. It should be delivered by January of 2025. Hopefully that'll come in November of 2024. They said they might be 2 months ahead of the backlog, I guess you could say. But that truck is in order. That $1.4 million is in an account, and the city would just use that money and subsidize it with the loan if necessary.
If necessary.
I would just
And
ask that
the
we-
coupon rate on that is like 3.75% was estimated by our debt advisors, so.
Okay, and I would just ask, Ms. Cronin, that when we know what we actually are going to borrow, if anything, that we please are notified of what that would be. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say, I apologize, last thing I want to say, just out of deference to the Parks Board and to Director Bunnell, today I received a letter from Director Bunnell submitted by the Parks Commission Chair for the city, James McGrath, and Mr. McGrath asked if I could please read this to the committee and the public, dated today. This is in reference to 107-24, the $164,000 for the Parks Department capital. Thank you, Chief, by the way, for answering questions. Dear Finance Committee members, I am writing to express my strong opposition to Order 107-24, which proposes appropriating $164,000 from the Parks Department capital, crediting reserved for municipal purposes. While we understand the city's diverse needs, the Parks and Recreation Department budget is already critically limited. Combined operational budgets make up less than 0.5% of the overall city budget. This makes even small appropriations like this one highly impactful on our ability to serve the community. Our department has made substantial progress in the past year and a half, despite these funding constraints. Reappropriating funding from two of the smallest departments within the city will only negate the progress that has been made. The parks and roads have always been a concern to the community, and the lack of funding to correct, fix, improve, or maintain them tends to be pointed out often by the public. Limited transparency. The order lacks specific details on how the funds would be used. Without a clear understanding, it's difficult to assess the true value of this appropriation for the Parks Department. Competing priorities. The Parks Department has several critical ongoing needs within our city parks that require funding. Allocating a significant sum without a defined purpose may come at the expense of these essential projects or programs. I believe that other ways can be found to address the city's needs while ensuring the Parks and Recreation Department has the resources it needs to continue serving our community. Thank you for your time and consideration. Just to answer Mr. McGrath's first point about the details of where the funds will be used, it has been made clear at this point that the funds are likely going to be earmarked for covering the upcoming fiscal 25 deficit for the budget as a whole. So that's what it's going to be used for. Basically, the wealth is going to get spread out and cover whatever we can't cover internally. Director Bunnell wanted me to also mention that the projects that are likely going to be impacted by this transfer, he was requested by the mayor several weeks ago to, as all department heads were, to give back money that was unexpended or unencumbered. And being the team player, of course, that he is, he mentioned to the mayor that there were accounts within the capital line item that were earmarked for specific efforts that haven't been spent yet. And the mayor decided to take that money that wasn't used. He says that and I'll give this to you as well, when the mayor asked departments if there were different ways to help with the budget, she came and spoke with me regarding the free cash funding that potentially could be available. Some of the projects have started while others at that moment had not. The money, I believe, is coming from 2 free cash appropriations designated for the parks. The first appropriation was made before I was employed by the city for $90,000 for a new parking lot and safety improvements at Moran Field where Fitchburg Youth Soccer plays. This project was intended to be done last summer, but due to the unexpected weather and heavy rain, it did not come to happen last summer. The DPW commissioner and I were planning on doing this project this summer. The second free cash appropriation was $100,000 for improvements to Mama Fitz Playground on North Street and Park Hill Playground, each playground receiving $50,000 apiece. Half of the money for the Mama Fitz Park had already been provided to community development projects for Mama Fitz, so what would have been an additional alternate option was able to be included in the basic scope of work with community development. The remaining money for the park and Park Hill would have gone towards finishing the projects like the landscaping, benches being added, tables, fencing, and the smaller improvements to complete the projects when the playgrounds are installed. Hoping that due to material costs, some of the fixtures and doing some of the smaller work would have helped reduce the project costs so the project could be completed and the work could be done in-house. These projects have not started, and I'm not sure when they are scheduled to begin, but when those projects are completed, it would be nice to have the funding available to finish the project completely, and that's what he wanted me to relay. So I have more to say, but I'm going to, President Zarella, please go ahead.
Thank you. Before I address any of these specific transfers, I just wanted to highlight a few what I see as key points for the public. One is that this is not entirely unexpected. We've been being told by the previous auditor for, 3 or 4 years now that we were going to hit a budget crunch eventually. We knew it was coming. We knew we were going to have some lean years. It is worse than we anticipated, but that leads into my second point. The fact that it is worse than anticipated is not the fault of either the previous administration or the current administration. It's not the fault of the previous administration because, as we heard earlier this evening, most of the increased expenses came from sources that couldn't reasonably have been forecast in previous years. And it's not the fault of the current administration because, frankly, these issues would have happened no matter who was sitting in City Hall at the time. So I just want us to consider this in that context, in the context that this is a problem that we have to deal with, but there is no blame to be assigned here. This is not us fixing anyone's messes. This is just a thing that happened, and that now we have to find the path forward. That being said, I just wanted to briefly address the parks issue. I've spoken before about how valuable our parks are to the city and how we can't, sacrifice them for a quick buck. That being said, when we are up against a budget crunch, it's inevitable that we have to prioritize. And as much as it feels bad to say that certain city services or priorities are less important than others, that's what we have to do when we're in a tight budget year. And so I certainly hope that either due to unanticipated revenues or due to closer analysis of the budget once it is released to the council, that maybe we can reinstate some of this park funding. But compared to the prospect of, workforce layoffs or reductions in critical services, the addition of benches and fencing to our parks, while important, is not of equal importance. And so I may have a different opinion when I see the budget, and maybe it will appear to me at that time that there were better sources we could have cut from, and then there will be the opportunity for myself or another councillor to propose those cuts instead, with the recommendation to the mayor's office that these funds be re-added to the Parks Department. But not having seen the budget yet, I'm not prepared to second-guess the finance team and assume that there were better places to pull this money from. I'm more than willing to transfer this money on the assumption that the finance team did its due diligence. And then, as we are able, I will be in full support of funding the Parks Department at the level that it needs to sustain itself and to sustain its services to the community. I'm saying this because I don't want it to appear to anyone that I'm saying that our parks aren't important or that the services they provide are not valuable to the community. They are. I've said before, I practically grew up in Coggeshall Park, and my daughter loves it as well. It's just when we don't have enough money for everything, we inevitably have to rank our priorities. And if it comes down to better parks or better parks sooner, as I'd prefer to look at it, versus keeping all of our employees employed and keeping all of the services that impact people's everyday lives well-functioning and affordable, I have to go with the latter. So I hope that no one within the Parks Department and that no one who uses our parks sees this as a snub, because it is certainly not intended that way, but I will be supporting this transfer.
So what I wanted to say in addition was the reason why I reiterate many times over my years of experience here is because it's just the fact that I am the only person on this council who has seen what a really bad budget year looks like repeatedly. I have not seen one like this since the first 3 years I was on the council, 08, 9, and 10. The health insurance increase alone of over $3 million, that's unprecedented. That's never happened in at least 30 years. I think, if I recall last fiscal year, it is true that the former auditor kept warning us that, to put it in more context, what he was trying to say was everything is cyclical. We have bad years, we have plateau years, then we have very good years. Well, for the past 7 out of the last 8 years, we had very good years despite the pandemic. And then last year, the cracks in the armor started to form because some of the revenues that we rely on started to drop. There are non-discretionary expenses that continue to grow. Recall last year that the health insurance trust fund increase in FY24 was $1.2 million, which was bigger than it's ever been in 15 years. That was the former administration, the former auditor, under the advice of our third-party actuary, who gives us an estimate of what the health care costs will be. Even the actuaries were off by a factor of 3. I have never seen an increase of this magnitude in my 20 years here. And as I said, the prior administration prepped for this by adding $1.2 million, which was an unprecedented increase. $3 million is unheard of. But it's being felt throughout the country, throughout the state. There was an article in CNN yesterday saying that rates are the highest they've been in 45 years in a single year. And also the high cost claims. No one can predict what our employees are going to have for illnesses, the scope of them, and it just was a rough year this year and next year. So I agree that, and this goes without saying, I'm not saying this because of who the prior mayor was, obviously, but it's not the prior mayor's fault. It's not the current mayor's fault. You can't effectuate changes in pension and health insurance. Those two alone are $4 million. And labor contracts, yeah, you could say that the prior administration had a hand in that, but so didn't this council, with the exception of Councilor Walsh. Every contract the mayor negotiated last year, this council unanimously funded. So, and to cover the council's actions, we didn't do it because everyone was living fat and happy and we figured let's just throw more money towards them. We all know why we did it. Certainly with the DPW, being told every time by Ms. Davis that we had non-competitive salaries and wages while we couldn't staff a department. So there was logic behind those increases. So when you talk about labor costs that are contractual, pension and health insurance, you can't really do much with those. And that's about 70% of the increase. The use of free cash of, I know it's 1.2 technically, but it's really 4.6. That too is unprecedented. I've never seen a number that big before, even during the bad years of 08 through 11, about balancing. But I will say this, that the utilization of free cash to balance a budget, it is not ideal. It signals a structural weakness. Not in fiscal year 22 and 23. That was an appropriate use of free cash because of the pandemic. Because we lost Great Wolf revenue. It was a temporary Band-Aid, which is perfectly allowed under DOR regulations to use free cash because you're going to get that revenue back after the storm clears. Last year, we still saw some effects of that, which is why we had to use 1.3. And now this year, it's for a whole bunch of reasons. While using free cash signals structural weakness to varying degrees, and I have been critical of using it in the past, to be consistent and intellectually honest with the public, I am not going to attack anybody for their use of the free cash, because by doing so, as I've said many times over, and I said it a lot last year, because the prior administration got beat up for the 1.3, and I kept saying to everybody, if you don't agree with it, where are your 1.3 million in cuts that the mayor chose not to implement? That's our bite at the apple. With the exception of a couple of councilors, notably Councilor Van Hazinga, who put forth, I think, about $1 million, the majority of the council didn't vote for him, including myself. So, you know, if you're not going to be happy with the free cash usage and go after the administration, but then not offer up your own cuts, that's having it both ways. And that's the only point I've been making since I've been a councilor. Because in the years that I criticized the use of free cash, I had a blueprint to cover it up, and it wouldn't get passed. So I had a leg to stand on. And anyone else who does that has a leg to stand on. But if I don't like the fact that we've got to use $4.6 million in free cash to balance this budget, which is gigantic, well, then my responsibility to the public is, where are my $4.6 million in cuts? Now, I'm going to look at this budget with a surgical knife like I do every single one of them, and I'm probably going to do my best to not be crazy about nickeling and diming, but 4.6 is a big number. And so I will be the first to say that I'm not going to criticize the administration for using it, because what's my alternative? This is the point I tried to make last year and years prior. And I'm pleased to see that there is a recognition on this mayor's part that it's not that simple. Because, with all due respect, when the mayor was a councilor, she was one of those who criticized the prior administration for free cash usage. Well, now she knows up front why it ain't that simple. Because to cut $4.6 million will devastate this city to the levels of 2008. I don't think any of us want to see that. I don't. So I don't fault the use of it. I don't like it. It's scary. But what is my alternative? I haven't seen the budget yet. I'm sure I'll have some alternatives, but they're not going to make the $4.6 million. That's just a guarantee. Unless I want Chief Suarez to have half the firefighting force, Chief Martineau to tell those new recruits we just had yesterday, go home. I'm not going to do that. Because I've seen what's happened when we did do that. We had to do that in 2008. And I'll sum up with this. People have to understand, too, the reason why Fitchburg got itself into the hole it got itself into 15 years ago was not because it would use existing cash on hand to balance its books. It used anticipated for several years, meaning the mayors at that time would tell the finance team and the council, I've got no money to cover a $3 million deficit, let's say. So I am going to assume I have $3 million that'll get certified next December, well after July 1st, and I'll use it then at that time to plug the hole. I mean, that's playing Russian roulette with the finances. What if you don't have that money? What if that's not what the certification comes in at? What do you do then? The city would do that repeatedly over the many years, and that's why we got to a point where there was no money in stabilization, and we went almost bankrupt. Because we were balancing the budget with no reserves, fictitious reserves. At the very least here, the money's in our hand. So while it's not ideal and it's not good, it's better than using fictitious free cash that we don't have yet, that we're hoping we do get 10 months from now, or 7 months from now. That's what the city used to do. And so on the Parks Department, what's difficult for me here is this is the first time in 17 years that I've seen transfer orders before us that are required to balance a budget that we haven't seen yet. Typically, the prior two administrations would, as I said, they'd have available existing funds like the 1.2, and that would be sufficient to cover the gap. So that transfer order would be with our budget orders when we get the budget. Here is a situation where we haven't seen the details yet, where I can't say if there is 165 that I could maybe convince 5 of my other colleagues to cut, so the mayor doesn't have to remove this 164 from these critical parks projects. I haven't had that opportunity yet. So this is putting the cart before the horse, but not for any poor reason. It's necessary, but pick your poison. If I vote to remove this money now, I fear I'm waving the white flag on, I can't try to get that money back, because I'm, notwithstanding any commitment from the mayor, I can't guarantee to Mr. Bunnell or Mr. McGrath or anybody else that this money, if we do cut 165, let's say, it's all going to go back to them. It likely probably won't. So once this is gone, to me, it's going to be gone. So I'd rather see the budget first before I commit to moving this. For 10624 and 10824, those are orders where nothing is being impacted. The 10624, those are just unused funds that doesn't really move the needle. 10824 is being propped up with the loan instead. But the 10724, that's it. They're not, there's no coverage with them. So I don't have a problem with 10624 and 10824 for those reasons. I don't know how I'm going to go with 10724 because I want to see the package first, understanding that by not supporting it, there may likely be a 164 deficit in the budget that we get whenever we get. And the last thing I'll say that segues into that is last night with the suspension of the rules votes, the reason why I didn't vote for suspension was because of my years of experience here, understanding that this is over $3 million of transfers that are directly impactful to the budget. And in regular council, councilors are constrained by rules to only talk twice. And I was afraid that you couldn't get everything in, you might forget stuff, and I did. And there were a lot of questions. And I knew going in, if May 15th comes and goes, there is nothing wrong with submitting a budget on May 15th that's not balanced. We've done it before. We did it last year. And then we go through the regular order, because the vote of 7-4 last night would indicate to me that at a minimum there's 7 councils that are going to vote for all these. So that was never really in question. Worst case scenario, we would have adjudicated this fully, legislated this fully by June 4th, and then June 5th, everything would have been whole, and we could move forward in those 4 weeks with whatever we had to do. Or I would have been willing to hold a special meeting of finance if we couldn't get them in tonight, next week, so then we could have a special city council meeting before May 15th, and everything is fine. So I just want the public to understand, because unfortunately, one of my colleagues is on social media criticizing my decision and saying that my decision put the budget in jeopardy, people's jobs are in jeopardy. It's not true, everybody. That's not what my intent was, obviously, and that's not what was going to happen. The budget could have been passed to us with a deficit, and then we cover it later. Or there were other mechanisms to get it through before the 15th. I wanted to have a full, transparent committee hearing that I got a lot of questions from constituents on. Some of the questions they asked me I couldn't answer, and there was no information provided to this council until Monday at 2 o'clock. So, with no information as to why suspension was needed, no information as to what we were doing here, I couldn't answer people's questions. So I wanted to have a hearing. And we have that hearing now, and we have, today's the 8th, we have a full week, 8 days, for the council president to then schedule a special council meeting if these pass, get them through, and then no problem. So the unfortunate statements being made out there right now by one of my colleagues, I really hope people don't take that at stock value, because it's not true. It really isn't. That's it for now. Mr. President?
Thank you. First, just in brief response to that, I'll just say motions to suspend, contentious motions to suspend, are always difficult because they're, formally speaking, undebatable. And so it's entirely possible that I think everyone would have come out of last night with a very different perspective on things if we had been able to have it all out before the vote, rather than taking the vote, not really being able to discuss it much, and then gaveling out. So, you know,
Well,
there were a lot of strong feelings.
I will say this, Mr. President, not to cut you off, but, you know, in the 14 years that I've been chair of this committee, under Lisa Wong, under Steve DiNatale, Dick Saracen, Calvin Brooks, it has been customary for committee chairs, when there is suspension of the rules being requested, that the committee chair be apprised in advance, consulted, and given the right of first refusal. And I was not given that courtesy. That's not why I voted no last night. But again, I got the suspension orders with everybody else. I didn't know anything about why. I didn't know anything about what was going on. I didn't get anything for whatever reason. And I'm not going to speculate the reasons in public. I have my own personal idea of why, but that's it. I didn't have any information. And even the information we got at the 11th hour wasn't sufficient enough for me to proceed because, again, I knew from experience holding these to either tonight's meeting or a future meeting was not going to put anything in jeopardy. It just wasn't.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, if anyone needs to shoulder the blame for that, it can fall on me because I received the requests for suspension. In the past, usually when I receive a request for suspension, I just mention it to Joanna to put it on the agenda, and I assume everyone has been appropriately notified. But ultimately, I had the information I should have checked, so I apologize. As to the matters before us, there are just two more points I'd like to raise. One is simply, I want to reassure everyone that as difficult a budget season as this is going to be, we aren't riding on the edge here like we were in past years when, because we do have, and I give ample credit to the prior administration for this, we do have a very robust stabilization fund. So if it turns out that as wire thin as this budget is, some unanticipated emergency happens over the course of the next fiscal year, we're not high and dry. We have the funds to cover it. We shouldn't, if we can at all avoid it, because that's the point of stabilization, leave it untouched if we can. But I want everyone to know that if there is an emergency, we're not stuck passing the hat to, you know, repair a critical city building that fell apart or to, you know, fix the streets if we have another flood like last year. We do have money for that. The other thing is, it's not on our agenda tonight, so it hasn't been discussed much. In fact, it's not on any agenda yet. But Vice President Van Hazinga and myself have been in contact with the mayor's office regarding, and the finance team, regarding potential revenue measures going forward that certainly can't be incorporated into this year's budget. There just wouldn't be time to realize any of those revenues. And some of them won't be able to be formally incorporated into our budget anyway. But the point is, measures are being considered to improve the financial situation prior to the next budget cycle. And I don't want to sort of jump the gun in terms of discussing the specifics, but I think there are some very creative solutions that are being put forward, many of which had been briefly discussed by the prior auditor and a few new ones. And I'm encouraged that when we sit here a year from today, we will be in at least somewhat of a better position, though it won't close the gap on its own. But I just want people to know that there are things that will be on future agendas in the coming months. This isn't just something where we're saying we're really tight. Oh well, got to deal with it. There are plans being put forward, and that I hope will be at a level of preparation to be put to the council in fairly short order.
Just on your,
Just one more thing. I was just going to say, I have no strong opinions on the 10724. It's a small enough number that, as I said, I'm okay with kind of giving the finance team the benefit of the doubt and voting for it. But if my colleagues would prefer to hold off on that one item and wait and see and make the transfer after seeing a budget that's $164,000 in deficit, that's a much more tenable scenario to work with than being several $million in deficit when we see the budget. Not to discount what the chair said about, we can do that, but it's not something I'm hugely comfortable with. $164,000, on the other hand, that's workable. We can look at the budget and say, okay, yeah, we really do need to pull that stuff from the parks, or we can say, no, there are better places to pull it. I'm fine either way. So, Mr. Chair,
just to
I yield the floor.
expand on what you said, sir, about stabilization, just for the public's edification, because I get this all the time. People hear free cash, they hear stabilization. They're two separate accounts. Free cash means it can be used for any lawful municipal purpose. It's free to be used for anything. At the end of the fiscal year, we sync up our revenues and expenses, and if revenues are more than expenses by, let's say, $3 million, the state certifies our free cash amount of $3 million and then says to the city, you are now free to use this $3 million on anything you want. All right? Stabilization is a separate reserve account that requires a 2/3 vote of the council to appropriate, and it is largely recommended strongly by DOR to not touch it if you at all possible, unless you really can't help but need to use it, and if you do, it should only be for major emergencies. So the reason why we had such a huge problem in 2008 was, in addition to using fake money to balance, we had no stabilization fund. We had $10,000. DOR says you should have at least 5% of your total. Right now, Fitchburg has around $9 million.
Yeah.
Around $9 million. So in 15 years, we've gone from 10,000 to 9 million. And it keeps growing, as it should. So to the president's point, if there were to say some problem during the year that we did not expect in these tight times, imagine the fact that we have a $9 million safety net to support us versus $10,000. So that and that alone will help me sleep better at night, even with the current situations we face versus where we were 16 years ago. So I just want the public to know that they're two separate accounts. One you can use anytime you want for any purpose you want. The other account you can use for anything you want, but it's highly advised not to touch it unless, the sky is falling. I mean, you want that account to stay untouched or grow. You don't want to deplete it, as we learned the hard way. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share the chair's concern that if 10724 is passed, that money is going to be taken from the parks and never returned. And I also share President Zarella's comfort level with sending a budget that's $164,000 out of balance. So, and so I'm very comfortable not voting in favor of 10724.
Councilor Bushman.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Jackie, the team, Chris, and the mayor for the things they asked for, no layoffs, and no taking money back. I really appreciate that. You worked awful hard, and I understand it. On 107, I don't mind working in good faith with the mayor. I believe, I haven't talked to her yet, because a lot of that money came out of Park Hill that I've been trying for years to do different things, that I think that she would put it back in. I'm relying on her good faith on that. So, I felt the same way that you did, but I got to rely and have some trust. And if we cut the budget, if we find some areas where we can cut, I don't know what you cut, but if we find some, then you can use the other money. But I hope that if we did find some cuts, you put the money back into the parks, so that they really need it, especially up at Park Hill, and even North Street. The one on North Street and the one at Morristown in West Fitchburg. And that's what I'm hoping for. But I do want to stress that I really appreciate the work you guys did. I want to say thank you. I know I bugged Jackie a lot, but I have a hard time hearing her. She talks too soft versus Kelvin. I had to tell her today to speak up. But I want to say thank you again, and I'm going to support this. I'll even support the cut on 107 with the understanding that we work in good faith. That's what I'm hoping for. So,
Councilor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to echo the gentleman from Ward 2 regarding the decisions that were made. Madam Auditor, it was 7.6 was the deficit, correct? 7.6 million?
Yes.
It was almost, double what we were kind of anticipating? 3
Yeah,
or
it's
4?
usually around 3.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a staggering figure, and I really commend you and your finance team and all the department heads for coming together and for getting to this conclusion here and making those tough choices, and not a single layoff, correct? No, those open positions that we
The
lost.
vacant positions, right.
So that's really terrific work, and I'm incredibly commend all of you for that. That work is very, very well done. I share the same sentiments regarding 107-24 and the money for the Parks Department. I'm comfortable leaving it out for now and coming with a budget deficit of 164. I won't continue bemoan the comments that were made previously. Regarding, Mr. President, your comments for added revenue, I think I shared with you a solution that I think we should implement. I won't get into it, but I hope that's in the discussions as well that you've been having with the administration and Councilor Van Haziger. We can't get into it now, but I'm hoping that that's the approach that we take. I yield the floor. Thank you.
Is one of those revenues, because I thought I saw it in one of our agenda items, is it the hotel tax? 6%?
That's been passed.
Right, we already did that, right?
Yes,
And
that-
so
the
is
pro-
that in the numbers?
That cannot be in the budget?
Okay.
Well, it could be, but we're already relying on the hotel tax to the tune of $1 million,
Right.
which is, we're vulnerable there, which, we experienced that back during COVID when the hotel closed.
Yep.
So even though we have, the city has passed this additional 2%, which would be another $750,000. So that really is free cash. We're not going to put it in the budget, but we're going to guarantee that you've got free cash, which every year is your snow and ice and your other types of appropriations.
Is it likely, though, that in fiscal 26, once we get the actual receipts, we probably will put some of that in there?
Well, we already have $1 million in there, and that is $1 million of exposure for the city.
Okay.
It's possible, but it's not a good practice.
Yep.
I think the 900 or $1 million that we already have is stretching it.
Okay, so I just want to close with, I want to clarify that on 107-24, I did not say, no one said I said this, but everyone's saying it's a good faith thing. I did not say it's about trust. No. What I said was the mayor has the authority, when we make a cut in the budget, we are basically saying, let's say we cut $500,000. That's all we can do, over and done with. The mayor then gets a pile of money, not real money, but gets $500,000 returned back to her that we cut, that she can then put to whatever she wants. She can even put them back into the accounts we cut. Usually mayors won't do that because the council will then say, we're not passing the budget, or else why did we do it to begin with? But the mayor is free to put it wherever she deems necessary. All right, so it's not a matter of trust, it's just a matter of law where they're in charge of everything, and everybody's got their hand out. I can't say here on May 8th that if we were to afford her that ability, that there isn't something out there that we may all agree it takes precedent over the parks. So my only point is, if we relinquish it now, I feel that it's likelier than not likely that it's gone, meaning it's going to go somewhere else. And I'm not going to criticize the administration if that happens. But here we have a little bit of control, understanding that our parks are in dire need of improvements. We all know that. And we made commitments to them, and they've already returned quite a bit of money on top of this, as I understand. So without seeing the budget in its totality, but knowing at least where I sit, that I'm pretty confident I probably could upset some people with 160,000 in cuts. I feel that I could contribute to finding that money when I get the budget easier than impacting the Mama Fitz Field, the Morin Square, the Morin Field, and Park Hill Park. You know, I'd rather the Parks Department utilize that money for what they intended to do this year, because it's a capital expenditure. It's not recurring money, it's one-time money, and we can find the money elsewhere, or at least I can propose it where I sit. Others could too, but I'm just speaking for myself. I could propose it, and hopefully I get 5 of the votes that accepts it, and then we won't have to do this. The other 2 numbers are astronomical. 164 to me, I'm going to use air quotes, is easy to find in $165 million. $1 million plus is not, unless you are talking layoffs. There's no avoiding it. And layoffs likely in the big 3, DPW, police, and fire, which we all don't want to do. So I feel more comfortable in looking at the budget and proposing recommendations for cuts than just ceding this money back to the city and telling the Parks Department, you got to wait indefinitely for that money again. I feel like we've made a commitment. Like for the fire department, we committed to them, and we're still holding that commitment with the loan retainer. The ARPA funds, we didn't really commit to anything on most of it because it's unencumbered, so no one's impacted. But the parks, we committed to them. And it's the smallest number on the page. So I think we can break through that wall and find an alternative, is my opinion. So more discussion on this. I'm going to not support that transfer. The other 2 and the loan, I will. If for no other reason, then I haven't seen the budget yet, so I got to see what's in there. But I'm just about confident I'm not going to find 3.5. It was a struggle for me last year to find 800,000. So without layoffs. Councilor Boschman.
I had a question. I heard you say stuff. I was told last year that if we made cuts to her budget, to your father's budget, that no matter if we made the cuts, that money can still stay in there as long as he doesn't spend it. He can put it back into the, say, parks the following year. Am I right or wrong when I say that, Jackie?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
My question is, if I make a cut here, you say, in Chris's department, and she just, I'm just using that for an
So
example.
I can answer your question, Council.
Go ahead.
So
I was told we
So,
couldn't.
so the mayor has 2 avenues when you make a cut in a budget meeting. The mayor can, let's say, so last year we cut 40,000.
Right.
It was the PR communications
Right.
Contract line item. So let's say last year we cut that 40,000. What the mayor ended up deciding to do is reduce one of the revenue line items by 40, just to make it whole. He didn't keep the money there or repurpose it somewhere else. He just reduced one of the revenue line items. So that's option 1. Option 2 is the mayor can say, okay, I'm going to submit to you a budget amendment for 40,000, and I'm going to give it to the fire department. Do you agree? Council may say no. That wasn't our collective intent, and we cut that money. We'd rather it go to DPW, you know. But that's the second option they have. She has. The third option is, okay, you cut it from the community development office. I'm going to keep it in there. I'm just not going to spend it. And then it becomes free cash.
Right.
Or if she wants to transfer it at a later date, We have to approve that transfer, so there's transparency on that. So there's three options. Lower the revenue by an equal amount, and no one gets anything. Keep it in the account and don't spend it. Or move it somewhere else with our approval. Those are the three options. So either way, you're going to know what happens with it. But my concern is once we figure out what that 164 may go to, like if it's for Chief Suarez for a couple of critical equipment vehicles for the fire department, the police department, we're going to be hard pressed to say no to that. Thanks. Whereas here, I'd rather try to find the money. And I'm confident we can, because in every fiscal year that I've been on this council, I have been easily able to find $200,000 that I consider easily able to find. I haven't been successful getting a majority vote, but I believe there are avenues we can take that the mayor did not think of or choose to do that we then have a bite at the apple, and I think we can stay having to do this. The other two are big numbers, and they're not impacting anybody. This is impacting 3 parks, 1 in your district. I think there's another way to find this. That's it. Mr. President.
On that topic, I think I will join 3 of my colleagues in voting against that specific transfer. However, I would like to just note that when we do get around to disposing of that item, we should be sure to give it leave to withdraw rather than voting it down, so that when the budget comes around, if we can't find that money to cut, or if the council doesn't approve those cuts, the mayor can then resubmit this same order, and at that time, I would then support it if we have been unable to find the...
Yeah, the other alternative I just thought of, too, is if we don't support this and the budget gets submitted with a deficit, under the predicate that we are committing here that we're going to try to find that money in the process, let's say we don't find it. Let's say we don't agree to find it. Some of us find it and others don't agree, so we don't have a majority vote, and the budget's still in deficit 164. Then this can be resubmitted to us. Mm-hmm. And we'll deal with it then.
And that is the premise on which I'll be voting.
That's why he's suggesting leave to withdraw, so we can have it resubmitted as a reconsideration, if you will, after we've looked through the package. I am basically saying I want to look at the package first before I just say take it away from the Parks Department. I want to look at it first. Maybe we can find 165. And if we don't, then resubmit it. Or maybe there will be another option available later on. But I think it's too early right now. July 1st is a long way away. Is May 15th a legal date? Or is that just a custom practice ever since I've been on here?
It's a custom.
Okay.
But if you want to, once the mayor delivers the budget to the city council has 45 days to act. So that's why we use the May 15th date. Technically, under the law, the mayor is not required to provide that to you until 170 days into the new year. So that would be June 20th, which give you. So there'd be two things there. You either had 2 weeks to act, or it carries into July and we don't have a budget. So the prudent and straightforward thing to do is give you your 45 days and have a budget on July 1st. So that was the premise and the reasoning behind suspension of the rules, is to get this to you on the 15th, so you have your 45 days to deliberate.
And my premise, too, was understanding before, we used to have meetings on Saturdays. I'm not advocating that, but we'd have 4 meetings a week in the glory years, 15 years ago. Ask Lisa Wong. She'd bring the coffee and donuts. We have plenty of time, because I understand that our colleague next door, our Mayor Mazzarella, and I know this from speaking to councilors, there are years he doesn't submit his budget till June 15th, maybe later.
Well, that's the 170 days.
He's lucky if he gives the council 2 weeks. We're afforded 6. So that's another reason why I'm trying to tell at least one of my colleagues who's not here, can we calm down, please? Nothing is in jeopardy here, okay? I would not do that. I've been here too long for anyone. I hope to think that that's the case. So that's it. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve 106 and 108-24.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 10624 and 10824, the transfers involving ARPA of 1.8 and the fire department ladder truck 1.4. We have a motion and a second on the.
I'm happy to withdraw my motion if the chief would like to.
We're going to get to that separately.
That'll require a separate vote.
Yeah. So
I'll renew my motion.
do I have another second?
Second.
Okay, motion made, seconded to approve the ARPA transfer of 1.8 million, 10624, and 10824, 1.4 million. Any discussion on the motion? If there are no objections, I will take this under unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, they're both recommended unanimously.
Motion to approve 124.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded to approve the loan order for 1.4 million for the fire ladder truck, 100-24. Any questions, discussions on that motion? If I see no objections, we will take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, that is unanimous.
Motion to give leave to withdraw on 10724.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded to give 107-24 leave to withdraw, and that's a recommendation, correct?
Yes.
So the full council can decide not to, but we're recommending to give it leave to withdraw. Any questions? Council Boschman, on the motion.
I'm going to trust the mayor. I think that if she had the money, she would leave it in there. I think that when I talked to her earlier, she didn't even want to close down the parks for water for swimming. And they could have did that this year too, so they didn't do that. So I'm going to vote against what your recommendation is. I'll trust the mayor on your word.
Oh, no, I didn't sign that.
On the motion?
Mr. President?
I just want to reiterate the remark that the chair made earlier that my motion on this is not about a lack of trust in the mayor. It's simply a willingness to leave our options open. My colleagues persuaded me I was going to be voting for this transfer, but I only see this as a choice between deciding now or deciding later. This is not a matter of whether I trust the mayor or the finance team, just a matter of leaving our options open on such a comparatively small amount. In the interest of making sure that we've had a chance to consider everything.
Council Walsh.
I concur. It's not a matter, it's not a question of trust, it's just a question of leaving that option open. So thank you.
I just want to make one thing straight. I didn't mean it. I used my words wrong when I say trust. So I don't want that.
I understood. No.
So I mean, I just believe she should keep it in there and put it back.
Okay. I have a motion made and seconded to give 107-24 leave to withdraw. If there are no, I'm going to take a vote on this, obviously. So, Councilor Walsh, to
Yes.
give leave to withdraw.
Yes.
President Zarella?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Council Boschman? No. Council Cruz? So it's given leave to withdraw by a vote of 4-1.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to adjourn. If there are no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you.